Welcome to the Home Bliss Show.
Hi.
And we have our resident mental health therapist here with us this evening, Nicole Tinsley.
Hello.
And I know some of you are wondering, a mental health therapist, but there's a lot of psychology in real estate. And Nicole has been giving us tips every week on how to manage stress throughout the process and tips on managing expectations and just a lot of things that the average person would not think has to do with real estate. But as I said, psychology does definitely have a place in real estate. And one of her main points is managing your expectations. So, Nicole, if you could just recap with us about, managing those expectations to help keep that stress down, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. So, some of the things that we've been talking about when it comes to managing your expectations is one, pinpointing what you're expecting. Knowing exactly what you're expecting, and by being able to do that, you write things down. Write down all the questions that you may have. You write down any concerns you may have. You write down the process or questions about the process. There are times where some of us, we're very green. I just spoke with a really good friend of mine a couple of days ago, and she was saying how excited she was to be purchasing her first house, and then she's like, but I'm really scared. She's like, and mainly her fear is because it's the unknown.
Right.
She doesn't
Definitely.
know, and she's heard so many horror stories.
Yeah.
So a lot of times what happens is that we relive our unknown stories through other people's stories.
Definitely.
So we have questions like, well, I heard this happen, and I heard that happen. Well, you should write all that down. You should talk to your realtor about that, and maybe even ways in which you can overcome those situations. I know personally, one of the big things that I learned years ago was to be able to walk in knowing exactly what I qualified for, and having a finance company that was backing me up from the time that I put the contract in.
Right, definitely.
I actually experienced a costly mistake that that did not end the way that I expected it to a couple years ago. And so it was like, oh, that's just like managing, being able to, like, my expectation was one thing, and something totally different turned out. So,
did you have a realtor then?
I actually did have a realtor.
Okay.
I did have a realtor then.
Okay.
This is years ago. It's probably about 15 years ago now.
You're 21. Stop it.
I know. But I think that that's just very important for us to really write down things. And I was just thinking, I was reflecting on what I've heard other people talk about. I was reflecting on my own experiences, and how managing expectations are so important. Writing down questions are so important. Being able to ask questions, as I stated before, there's no question that's a dumb question.
Right, this is true.
Because if you knew, you wouldn't be asking.
If you knew better, you do better.
Absolutely. And then also just being able to breathe. Many times we go into a situation and we feel overwhelmed, and we're just, we don't categorize things in the right way, and because we can't breathe. When you're anxious, when you're feeling overwhelmed, you don't think clearly. And a lot of times what happens is that when you don't think clearly, you get very frustrated. And when you get frustrated, it's like those bricks that just keep piling on top of each other. Yeah. And before you know it, you're like, forget it, I don't want to do this anymore. So you have to remember to breathe. So whatever you do to be able to breathe, such as exercise, such as meditation, such as just being able to talk to a good friend and be able to just like scream and let it out, writing in journals. I'm a big believer in writing in journals. And journaling this process is very important. The home buying process, the selling process, the relocation process. Journaling that is very, very important. So
those are good tips. Yeah, I want us to circle back to that about what you said about writing things down, because I've noticed some of my clients, they'll have a little notebook and they'll take notes and they'll write certain things down. But that is important because I think the most times when questions pop into your mind about things is late at night or early in the morning. And so if you write them down,
Absolutely.
then you can even take a picture of it and send it to the agent or to the finance professional and say, hey, I was thinking about this, or I saw this commercial on TV, or I heard about this program. A lot of times people ask me about grant programs, and while a grant program is specifically, it's finance related, it's not really a real estate related thing as far as something that I would have an in-depth knowledge of. It's really finance related. So I'll have an overview, but when it comes to the nitty gritty of, okay, what do I need to qualify for this particular program, or can I use this program in a certain area? Because some of the programs, for example, there's one in Suitland, by Suitland, but it's only for specific census tracts. So it's not for the entire city. And then there's one in College Park. And of course, that's for College Park, but there's certain criteria, like I think you have to already work there in order to qualify. I don't think you already have to live there, but things like that. So if questions like that come up, I'll have an overview, but the finance professional will be the one to ask. But definitely, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. And if I don't have an answer, then I'll definitely find out. And the same thing for the mortgage professional, because sometimes we'll be asked questions that we don't know the answer to, but we can definitely find out because, and excuse me, that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to even do this show, is because I wanted to come from an educational standpoint. I've never been a pushy salesperson. So, and I mean, you know that from working with me. Like, I'm not a pushy.
Sometimes we need a little push, though.
Not a pushy salesperson at all. I want people to be educated and have the information that they need, because I feel like once you're educated, then you feel comfortable in moving forward, because I'm informed. I know what's going on. I know which way I want to go. So the educational part is very important. And even things like first-time homebuyer seminars and some of the grant programs, they have home buying classes. Some of them are online for maybe 2 to 3 hours, and then some are in person for 8 hours. Some have a series over a certain amount of time. There are programs where you'll stay in for a couple of months, and you'll have home buyer readiness programs over a certain time period to really prepare you, because it really is a lot of information. Not only is it a lot of paperwork, but it's just a lot of information to grasp. And there's so much more than, okay, let me get financed and let me find a house that I like. I mean, there's so many things that come into play. Last weekend, I went and I met with a new client, and we went to see a house that we saw online. It was really pretty online, but when we got inside, it was totally different. They didn't, well, for one, we were kind of leery because they didn't show the master bedroom and they didn't show the basement. Those are two main aspects of a house. So it's like, okay, why aren't they showing us these two rooms? And it wasn't too bad. It was just a lot of clutter and stuff like that. But it was a potential short sale. So while potential short sales are really good deals, sometimes they come with baggage. So, we really don't know whether or not that seller is going to come back and take the belongings that they have there. They may not. But I wouldn't let that discourage you, because you can get a really good deal. And sometimes they leave things behind that are valuable. I mean, I've seen cars left behind and just all kinds of stuff, furniture, old albums, encyclopedias, all types of stuff. But definitely I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that's a good way of managing your expectations. So, yeah.
Definitely, because you never know what to expect from a potential short sale. But if you have an open mind and just go into it knowing that, okay, once you move in, you're going to clean it up, you're going to clean it out, and then you're going to move your belongings in and make it your own. That's the point. Because even when we go see houses that aren't potential short sales, it may be a regular sale and the person still lives there. They may have all their pictures up and they're really moved in. Sometimes we go see houses and we're like, are they moving? Because they haven't packed anything. So it's like,
sometimes
okay.
it's hard.
I'm pretty sure
It's
it can
hard.
be. It can be. But just having an open mind throughout this process really helps a lot, because sometimes throughout the process you have to deviate a little bit from your list. When you tell us about making our top 3 or our top 5, really, because I figure if you start with 5 and these 3 are my must-haves,
absolutely,
then so if you could tell us a little bit about that, about making the list of the top 5.
So once again, Just kind of being able to write down your list as to what it is that are you just can't live without.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of times what happens is that we go into places. We imagine ourselves being there. We imagine living there. We imagine our kids outside playing with the neighbors, the neighbor kids, or we imagine being able to pull our car up into the garage if that's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
So there are times where for some people, garages are not important to them. And so people are like, oh, why didn't you buy a house with a garage? Well, it wasn't important to me. You know, wasn't part of my top 3 or 5. So whatever is part of that, whatever you imagine seeing yourself do daily,
Right.
that's what you're looking for. And put that on your list. After you put that on your list, that's what you go out and you look for. Because a lot of times, let's say for instance, there is a house that you fall in love with, and you put a contract in, and you find out there's maybe like 5 or 6 other contracts, and then you don't get it.
It happens.
Absolutely, but then you don't get it. What you fell in love with were the amenities, and you can find those amenities somewhere else.
Definitely.
So if you know what you're looking for, if you have that on your list, if you write it down, you know exactly what I need every day. For some of us, we need a really good neighborhood in a good school district. And so that's what's very important to us. That's going to be on top of our list, you know. And so I'm not going to go into a neighborhood where the schools are horrible, or you know, they have low scoring, or something that is just not appealing. Those neighborhoods are going to be X'd out for me, you know. So you have to write down what it is that you're looking for, so that you can actually have a sense of direction.
Yeah, sometimes I meet people who only want to live in a specific neighborhood or a specific city, and sometimes that can be tricky if your list is too narrow, because in general, if you're only looking at a specific city, it depends on why. So if you're looking at a specific city because you want to use a certain program, then that's understandable and it's doable, but you have to be willing to spend a little more time than the average person. So on average, I mean, it really only takes about a month to secure a house under contract, depending on how actively you're actually looking. So if you're going out every weekend, then it should only take about a month. But if you're just going out maybe every other week or something like that, it can take a little longer. But if you've narrowed it down to the point where it's only a specific city or a specific neighborhood, or the price range is really tight between, you know, a price range is just really narrow price range, then it could take a little longer. So as long as you're willing to have patience and just wait for what you want, then you definitely can get it. And that kind of circles back to the potential short sales, because I have one going on right now where it went under contract at the beginning of March, and they're set to go to settlement. It was really any day now, but I think sometime next week it's probably more accurate. But potential short sales, as I always say, you can get really good deals on those. A lot of times you get a little bit more house than you would normally get if it's a standard sale. Or it could be a situation where you get more incentives, such as closing help from the seller, which, you know, right now is a seller's market still, but because of that, sellers are not always offering closing help even when it's a first-time home buyer. So things like potential short sales or bank-owned properties, especially Fannie Mae-owned properties, those are really good for first-time home buyers, because Fannie Mae has a program, I believe it's called Home Buyer Ready, I think that's what it's called. I'm not sure on the name, but if you take their course online for a few hours, they'll give you a certificate and they'll give you 3% closing help. So those are really good. And Fannie Mae has done a lot over the past couple years to put their properties in livable condition. So it's not just properties that are specifically for investors. They have a lot of properties that are move-in ready, where they've gone in and they've replaced the carpet, the appliances, they've done new paint, and they've really done a lot to spruce them up so that they're ready for someone to move in, and you won't have any issues with financing because of the condition and things like that. So if you're open and just a little open-minded about different things, then you definitely can find what you want. And and not to feel discouraged if you have a smaller budget, because again, potential short sales, bank owned, foreclosures, those types of things are really good for someone who has a smaller budget, or for someone who wants to keep their budget smaller, because as we talked about last week, just because you're pre-approved for 200,000 or 300,000, 500,000, it doesn't mean you have to go to your maximum if you don't want to. In a lot of instances, it is possible to not go all the way to the maximum, but you just have to be open and just, those things that you have on your list as your top 5, to just know that, okay, well, I can find it in a house that's 500,000, or I can find it in a house that's 450,000.
Right.
So if you're willing to compromise, compromising is important. And like I tell people, especially if it's your first house, it doesn't have to be your forever house. So you don't have to try and find everything in that first house, because more than likely you're not going to stay there forever. So you manage your expectations and say, okay, like a garage is usually important to people. A finished basement, or just a basement in general, is usually important. And you can get that in your first home, your starter home. And then a starter home can still be nice. There are plenty of renovated starter homes where you don't have to do anything to move in. But I mean, of course, if you want a project, then, things like that are always available.
Well, we watch HGTV so much.
Yes, they make it look
Projects
so
are great.
easy.
Oh, it is easy in 6 months.
Yeah, it can, it can be a bit much, but it's worth it in the end, because then you have it the way that you like it. Because even new construction houses, people will get a new construction house and they'll still want to change something.
Right.
They'll go in and they'll change the ceiling fan, or they'll change the light fixtures. But things like that help make it unique,
Right.
and help tailor it really to your taste and how you like things designed.
Right, and that's why it's important for you to go ahead and put your top 5 down, because other things can be changed. The aesthetics of a house can be changed, but maybe a neighborhood cannot be changed, or maybe it's more expensive to add a garage later on. Maybe just being able to, I don't know, have a basement. That's something that you can't change. Some people may want a rambler where there's just one floor. So the top 5 is important. And just those are the things that just cannot, you just can't live without it.
Yeah.
It cannot be changed.
Yeah.
But paint, you can always throw paint on the wall.
Yes.
You walk into a house and you're like, oh, I can't stand this paint. Repaint it.
Definitely. Those things are not that important. And you will see stuff like that. You'll see wallpaper, paint,
Hideous.
and borders. Sometimes you'll see all 3. I mean, we've seen houses where they have carpet in the entire master bathroom. Or, the color is just not, it doesn't match. It may be a different color in every room. Those things happen. And yes, the cost for that can add up. But if you look at it in the long run, okay, does the house check off on every other thing that's in your top 5 or your top 3? Then that's something minor that you can change over time. So that's not necessarily a deal breaker. I would never say a cosmetic is a deal breaker unless it's something that's really expensive. If it's a 3,000 square foot house and it needs to be completely carpeted, that may be a deal breaker, because that can get expensive if you have to remove all that carpet and replace it. But if it's something minor, like the kitchen is orange, then that's something that you can change. So I wouldn't necessarily X that out completely on the list. But you'll see that, and especially in houses, depending on what age range it is. You see that a lot sometimes in older houses, but sometimes you see it in houses built around the 2000s, when a lot of the new construction started happening and people were trying to get in with the trends and things like that. You'll see a lot of those trends in houses, but those are things that you can change, and a lot of those things you can change over time. It's not even something that you have to go right in and completely do a full renovation. Although I have seen people buy a house and live in it and renovate it. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I think that would not be an effective.
But that also goes along with managing your expectations.
Yeah.
Because if you purchase a fixer upper, then you have to know that that's what's going to what it's going to take. I've definitely have lived in a construction zone. I don't mind it, because at the end I love the end results. So here we have two people sitting at the table who have 2 different expectations, and so you wouldn't go in looking for something like that. I would go in looking for the worst house in the best neighborhood. So, but again, that's part of managing your expectations. Knowing, okay, if you get this, then this is what's going to come with it. If you do this, then this is what's going to come with it. Or if you don't do this, then this is what's going to happen. So it's just about knowing that.
And that's a good point, though, about getting the worst house in the best neighborhood, because sometimes that makes sense, especially when you look at how much a house would cost that was in move-in ready condition or was renovated. It could be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 plus, especially if it's in D.C. or if it's in certain parts of Prince George's County or Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County. You know, that might not be a bad idea. So if that's something you could deal with, to maybe live in the basement while the main and the upper level is renovated, or vice versa, then you really could have a true gem on your hands. And again, it's designed exactly the way you want it. Because there's nothing better than actually, okay, I like this paint. I like this fixture.
Having your own touch.
Yes, definitely. And people coming over like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. I know I designed it.
Right.
You know?
I mean, that's the thing. We love getting compliments.
Yes.
In our society. We love getting compliments. So when someone compliments, you know, oh, I love your crown molding. Well, I picked it out myself. You know, thank you. So that's a reflection of you. So that's, you know, that is a psychology behind it too, because it goes beyond the purchasing process.
Yeah.
It's what you imagine yourself in, and being able to entertain and being able to have family gatherings. And I mean, we just had Thanksgiving, you know. So can I see myself hosting Thanksgiving dinner or a holiday, whatever holiday we choose to celebrate? You know, can I see myself hosting that in there?
Yeah, I saw a show one time where they would let potential buyers spend the night at the house. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah, they would let them spend the night at the house so they can kind of get a feel for it. And I think that's really not a bad idea, because, I mean, why not? It will help them. They can see what the house is like at night, because a lot of times, especially if it's a person that's not familiar with the area. So let's say if it's a relocation, or maybe it's someone that's coming from Virginia to Maryland or something like that. They may not be familiar with the neighborhood, and as realtors, we're not allowed to talk to people about neighborhoods and schools. So what I suggest is wait until at night and come by, or wait until the weekend at night and come by. And if they want to know about parking, if there's like assigned parking, come in the evening after you think someone will be home from work, maybe, you know, after 5 or after 6, do that. And things like that, so you can really know. Because when you go see a house, we go in and we're looking at, okay, what does it look like? How big are the rooms? You know, what's in the kitchen? Are the appliances updated? We're not really inspecting the house as far as what will it be like to live in it. You know, so I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't know, maybe. I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask. Can I spend the night? You know, do you want?
Like you said, just make sure. You know, it's important to do your due diligence.
Yes,
being able to make sure that this is the absolute perfect house for me at this moment. Right. Because as you stated before, your first house, your second house doesn't have to be your last house. But you have to. I mean, you're investing your money into it. You're investing your time as far as either renovating or the keep up. You know, because there is a keep up. Yes. On a house. So you're doing that. So being able to make sure that at least I can stay here for about 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. You know? That's a good amount of time, because I think it takes about 2 years to unpack. I mean, most people just, you know, they just don't. It takes a while to unpack, and you never know how much stuff you have until it's time to pack and move. So I think that's a good time frame for stay, especially your first house. I would say 3 to 5 years is good, because at that point you get a chance to know, okay, do I really like it here? Do I want a bigger house? Is this house too big for me? Do I want a smaller house? Do I want to stay in this area? I mean, there's so many questions that can be answered after you've lived in a house for a while. You know, a person could pick a place that's in the suburbs for their first home, but after living there for a while, like, okay, there's not enough noise, it's too quiet. You know, you hear everything at night, and that may not be their idea of fun. So it takes time, and that's another thing, I think, why people get stressed out, because they expect things to happen really quickly, and sometimes they don't. Like we talked about on the last show, some sellers, when they get the offer, it may be on a Thursday or Friday, and they may not make a decision until Monday. But you'll have other sellers who will at least give a verbal confirmation the next day. So, you know, that's like, it all goes back to managing your expectations. It
Right.
really does, because just going into it, we have to have patience, because it's going to take time. Anything dealing with people and personalities is going to take time.
It's also a business. I mean, we have to
Yeah.
understand that the seller is going to, they may even try to wait just to see if they can get another offer to come in. Everyone wants to get the most for their money.
Definitely.
Everyone wants to if everyone thinks that their house or whatever they're trying to sell is worth way more than
Yes.
probably what they're advertising it for. And so if they're advertising the house for $400,000 and you offer just $400,000, they may wait for someone to come in, especially if it's a seller's market. They're going to wait for someone to come in at $425.
This is true.
So yeah, we have to understand that what market we're in, and that because of the market, that it may cause a delay in an answer, because the seller is also playing their business game.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
It's definitely a business, and that is important to understand that. And also, different people have different expectations. So as Nicole said, while the seller may be concerned about getting the most they can for the house, the buyer may be concerned about getting the house under contract as quickly as they can, because they have to move, or they want to move, or the lease is out, or school is getting ready to start if they have children. It could be a number of reasons, or they could be moving closer for where they work, or there are a lot of different factors that go into it. But the most important thing is to just try and remain as calm as possible,
Right.
because that way you can be level-headed, you can think clearly, and, you know, just not be so upset throughout the process, because it's a good time. It's one of the most expensive and important decisions that a person makes financially in their life. But it doesn't have to be a stressful process all the way throughout. It really doesn't. If you go into it prepared, you know, and your expectations are in line with what you're trying to do, then that's important. I think a lot of people end up getting frustrated because not only do they expect it to go fast, but they don't realize that they also have to move quickly. Because just as if you go see a house that you love, there may be someone before you that loved it, and then there may be 2 or 3 people coming after you on the same day that love it too. So that's another thing that's important. When you find something that you like, it's important to act on it, which also goes back to what Nicole was saying at first about back then when she was looking, the pre-approval. That is the most important part of it all, because you want to know your financial picture. You want to know, okay, the bank will loan me this amount, and this is the interest rate they'll loan it to me at, and this is my estimated payment. So you have that information, because a lot of times when people are looking for homes, they'll say, okay, I like this house, and they'll use the calculator online, but the calculator online doesn't include everything. It usually only includes the principal and the interest, but you still have property taxes, which add a couple $100, and then you have the homeowners insurance, which I'm not quite sure if that's a couple $100 or not, but it's going to add something to it. And then if there's an HOA, you have to add that in. And you know, you have most buyers have in their mind what range they want to stay within. So even if they're pre-approved for $300,000, they may only want a mortgage that's $200,000 or $225,000. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't get pre-approved first and you don't have that information, then you know you'll be out looking at things that you don't want to pay for. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't afford it, but it's just not something that you want, not a string that you want to put on your budget.
Right.
So.
And isn't it true that sometimes when you are going for the finance process, that maybe sometimes you have to pay off some stuff on your credit report?
Yeah, sometimes.
So and that may affect your bottom line as to what you can put down, because now you're using some of your deposit money to be able to pay down. Or pay for points or?
Because sometimes, depending on how much money they get from the seller, or if they want to use their own money, they can purchase points, which helps them buy down the interest rate. So if the interest rate is 4% and you want it lower, then you just pay a certain amount per I think it's quarter. So you pay X amount of thousands to get your interest rate down a quarter and go like that. But that's also another good point about the pre-approval, because if you don't go and speak to the mortgage professional first, then you don't know,
You won't know.
the most accurate credit picture. Because, of course, there are websites and there are apps that, monitor credit and give you scores and things like that. But the most accurate is a mortgage professional's credit report, where they can see, okay, what debts do you have, and then they'll also look at your income, and then based on that, sometimes even if a person's score is good, they can tell them, hey, if you pay this off, then it'll boost your score up this
Even
much more, and then it'll help your interest rate. So that's another thing. And then too, some people think it's two things. Some people think, okay, I can't buy a house because my credit is bad. And then sometimes you have people who say, well, I can definitely buy a house because my credit is good. Excuse me. But then when they get it checked, it's the opposite. And I have people that think I can't buy a house right now, but actually they can, because there's nothing wrong with their credit. They may not have to do anything. And then sometimes there are people who say, okay, well, my credit is good, but then things, once they get it checked, things pop up. So it's always important to go to that mortgage professional, because that person can guide you and give you the most accurate information, and get you prepared. Because even if you're not ready today, they can put you on a plan so that you're ready within a month or two, and still work towards your goal. So even if it's not today, it doesn't mean never, but you're informed, right? And being informed helps manage stress.
It does. I mean, the whole goal is to getting you out the unknown. A lot of times we're stressed because of the unknown. We stay up at night worrying about things because of the unknown. So the whole goal is to get you out the unknown. You're writing down your questions and you're getting your questions answered so that you can get yourself out of the unknown. So once you know, and when you know, you do better.
Exactly. So, and yeah, that's really our goal. We want to inform you and educate you and give you tips and tools that will help you make informed decisions. Because even if you don't choose me to be your realtor, you choose someone, you choose someone else, you'll have information and you'll have tools and knowledge so that you pick the person that's right for you. That's something that we talked about on a prior show. Just when you go to pick your realtor and you go to pick your mortgage professional, that you pick someone that's compatible with your personality and also compatible with your lifestyle. Because if you work early in the morning, a agent that fits that lifestyle may be better than one who doesn't start until later and who's available later, or if you're only available on the weekend but they're not. There's so many things, and it is like a relationship, because you're going to have to work together, you're going to have to talk to each other, you're going to email, text, and you're going to see each other in person. So it's definitely important that you work with someone that you're compatible, your personalities are compatible, and maybe even your lifestyles are compatible, because it really is a relationship and you're going to spend a lot of time together, and you want to feel comfortable with that person, because especially when you have questions, because there's nothing worse than having questions and feeling uncomfortable or apprehensive about asking them. You want to feel like this person is open and welcome to you asking questions and just questioning things, because sometimes professionals, because they use their lingo and stuff like that, they're not really thinking about, oh, okay, well, this person doesn't understand that. So if you need clarity, or sometimes you need something explained to you in a different way, it's important that you have that you're working with someone that understands your needs. That's because you don't want to be stressed out about that. It's like, okay, well, I have an agent, but I don't really want to talk to them because they make me feel like I'm asking dumb questions.
Right.
You don't want that. Or a mortgage professional, a lot of times the people don't realize how important it is to pick a finance professional or a finance company that's really compatible, because some of the finance companies, they don't actually have a dedicated person that you work with. It's like, okay, this person does this and then this person does this. So you end up with all these different people in the beginning stages. And it's really kind of confusing, because it's like, okay, well, who is my dedicated person that I can call? And that's important too, because it's like, okay, well, this person I was working with in January, but now February it's been passed on to someone else, and I don't even talk to the person in January anymore, or, so those types of things are important, because that can be stressful too, because, okay, now everything I told the January person, I have to turn around and tell the February person. There's no...
It's repeating. You have to repeat yourself over and over and over. But if I go in knowing that, then I'm expecting, okay, I'm gonna have to tell my story 5 times.
Yes. Yes. And that, that's another thing. A lot of people get frustrated with the process as far as paperwork. And it's like, okay, well, I just gave this person my bank statements yesterday. And now 3 days later, someone else is asking for it. But one of the reasons why they do that is because they want to sometimes verify that those documents are valid. Okay, well, they sent this on Tuesday, so let me ask them for it again on Friday and to make sure they send me the same thing. Because you have to understand that when you're buying a home, you're asking to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they're going to ask you for a lot of things. They're going to ask you for repetitive things. I had one company ask a lady for her divorce decree, and she's been divorced for maybe 20 years. And she just couldn't understand why do they want to see her divorce decree. But then once it was explained, it was because they want to know, does she have to pay alimony? Or was she ordered for her ex-husband to pay her child support or anything like that? Because all those things play a picture into her finances. If she has to pay a monthly alimony obligation, then that could affect her finances. Just like if she's getting child support each month, then that could help qualify her for a higher amount. So all the sources of income are important. And another thing about that is self-employed people can buy homes. There are loans for self-employed people. There are programs that they can use. So don't let that be a hindrance if you're completely self-employed, because there are definitely products out here. I mean, mortgage financing is really advanced. It's not like it was when our parents bought houses. It's so far advanced than it was then. They have all types of loans and programs, and I don't even know if they really had grant programs back then, but now it's different. There's so much available, and I really think people should definitely take advantage of the grant money, because most times, as long as they live in the house for a certain amount of time, they never have to pay it back. So it's very important to ask about that. If your agent or your mortgage professional doesn't mention it to you, then you mention it and say, hey, well, what about this program? Or are there any programs that I qualify for? And some programs you don't have to be a first-time home buyer. There are some where you don't have to be a first-time home buyer, and you can still qualify and get a couple $1,000s in free money. And I mean, who doesn't like free money?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As long as you're willing to live there for a certain amount of time, then you don't have to pay it back. And if you do happen to have to move, it's prorated. So I know one program, I think you have to live there for 10 years. But if you live there you have to live there for 10 years in order to not pay it back. But you have to live there for at least 2 years, or you have to pay it all back when you move. So if you stay for 2 years, you have to pay it all back. But then if you stay for 3, then it's prorated. You only pay a certain amount back. Okay. So, I mean, it's really flexible. It's not really restrictive. But programs are good. And those can be a little stressful sometimes, too, because you have to take classes, and then they have their own set of paperwork. Sometimes they have inspections. They have their guidelines and their rules and things like that. But again, as Nicole always tells us, managing expectations. So the expectation is that I'm getting free money. And so because I'm getting free money, then I have to cooperate with the process.
Absolutely. And that's the big thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, you have to cooperate with the process. But in the end, you reach your goal. So if you have to give paperwork over and over again, if you have to attend a class, if you have to, and some of them, they actually have a telephone class. So you just have your little class over the phone with a housing counselor. They ask you questions and they provide you information. So all of it is not strenuous per se. It just depends on what you want. Of course, the more money that you get in the grant, then of course it's going to be a longer list of requirements, but that doesn't mean that's a bad thing, because some of the programs give $10,000, $20,000, up to $30,000 that you can use towards your down payment and closing costs. And that's another thing about grant money. You can use it towards your down payment. As far as a seller giving you closing help, you can't use that towards your down payment. You can only use it towards closing costs. So that's another reason why grants are really good, especially for first-time home buyers, because they don't have to use all of their funds for their down payment. So that's definitely a good thing. But another thing I wanted to touch on was the time of year that we're in. We're in winter time, and sometimes buyers and sellers too don't really think that people are buying houses or selling houses during this time, and that is a common thought, but it's also a myth because people are always buying houses and people are always selling houses, and because people think that way, it's actually a good time for buyers because the competition is less, because most people think that no one's looking at a house right now. And so that competition that you get in the summertime with multiple offers and you have to bid up and up and up, it doesn't really happen that much in the winter. So if you were thinking about buying, now it's really a good time to consider looking more seriously into it, and talking to your mortgage professional to find out what you qualify for and what programs you qualify for grant money and things like that, because the competition is really less, and you'll find that properties will be on the market a little bit longer this time of year than they normally are. But that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean it's a bad house. But people are still buying. So, get out there and look, because I've been out in the snow, walking in snow, showing people houses. So it's still a good time. Actually, I recommend the fall and the winter over the spring and the summer, because spring and summer is inundated with people looking, and this time of year is much more calmer, and you can find some good deals. Sellers tend to be a little more flexible. At this point, it's a little late to get in before the end of the year. But, if you get started tonight, which, no, it's a little late. If you get started tomorrow, you may be able to. It just depends. It depends on your expectations.
Absolutely.
It depends on what you're looking for. It depends on what type of loan you're going to get, how much of your own money you're going to put into it. There's a lot of things. And that's another thing that sometimes makes the process a little more difficult, is the cooperation. It's important to cooperate because we all have the same goal. Your realtor, your mortgage professional, the title company, the goal is to get you in the house. So the things that you'll be asked for, these are all going towards meeting the goal. It's not because we just want to ask you for the same thing over and over again and just collect endless paperwork from you. It's because these are things that are needed in order to get you to your goal. So your cooperation is definitely necessary. But again, we understand it's stressful.
That's what I was gonna say. In managing our expectations, we're not saying that to be negative, like this is not going to happen, or that you can't have everything that you want. It's a matter of either knowing that in order to find that perfect house, it may take a little bit longer, or I need to be in by the end of the year, so let me find something right now, or or it's your passion, your ambition as well. So how passionate are you for getting this particular house? Okay, if they ask me for something 12 times, I'm going to give it to them for all 12 times.
Right.
Because I really want this house and I have to have this house. So it's just a matter of, that's what managing the expectations. I'm a big believer in whatever you put out in the universe, you will receive. So put the positivity out there. If that's what you desire, if you want the top 10, go ahead and put that out there.
Yeah.
But manage the expectations by knowing, okay, well, in order to get this top 10, it may take me a little bit longer than 30 days or 45 days.
Yes.
It may take 90 days. And if I have an honest conversation with my realtor and she's like, hey, or she, says, okay, you know what, we're going to find this house. You may only get 9 out of 10.
Still an A.
Then being able to manage that.
Yeah, definitely, because a lot of times some of the things that people look for on their list sometimes can be a little hard to find. It just depends on, it's like some people, if they want a newer house, but they're looking in a city or neighborhood that's predominantly older houses, then that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, don't look for closet space if you're looking for older houses.
This is true. This is definitely true. A lot of people, and also too, I don't know if a lot of people realize it, but apartment complexes are very clever. They give you huge closet spaces. They give you huge living room, huge dining room. All the spaces are huge. And then when you go look at a house, it's like, well, what?
My
Where's-
closet at my
Yeah.
apartment is bigger than this.
It's like, okay, what we're gonna actually have a show about stop paying rent, and just give you guys some statistics and some numbers on. I have one new client, and I don't remember how many years he's been renting for, but I want to say it's about 5 years. And at the end of his lease, to make his 5th year, he will have paid about $100,000 in rent
Wow.
in 5 years.
They would have bought a house.
In 5 years,
A little
$100,000. Yes. So, it's definitely renting it is easy because the maintenance is done. If anything breaks, you just make a phone call. You just don't have to worry about anything. But it's not yours. If you want to paint, you can paint, but you have to change the wall back before you leave. And I don't know about anyone else, but that's not my idea of fun. If I paint that wall purple, I want it to stay. I don't want to have to be worried about painting it back to the color it was before. How do I know I can get it back to that color?
And if you don't, you have to pay a charge.
Yes. And they want to charge you because they're mad you're leaving. So, it has its downfalls, and most apartment walls are thin. You hear people talking, you hear toilets flushing, you hear all types of things that you don't necessarily want to hear when you're renting an apartment. Babies crying and dogs barking
and people having fun.
Yeah, fun. But so home ownership will alleviate those downfalls of renting that you may or may not pay attention to because you may be used to it. But there's nothing like having your own space that you can decorate, and you don't have to worry about if you want to have a party, if someone calling the rental office saying, hey, they're making too much noise, or
change things like you stated before.
Yeah.
Making it your own.
Yeah.
In a condo, even if you don't want a house or a yard, or you want a nice condo, because you're always on the go or something like that. At least then you can have something that you can make it your own. You may want to change something as simple as the light fixtures, or you may want to be able to change the sink out. Maybe you've been watching the HGTV shows and you're like, oh my God, I just love this sink. But you can't do that in an apartment.
No, you cannot. Please don't change the sink. I would paint the wall before you change the sink, because if you do that, you're going to be in big trouble. Just don't. I remember one time, long time ago, when I was renting, and I didn't like the refrigerator, so I moved the refrigerator out into the garage, and I bought a new refrigerator. And at some point, the original refrigerator that was in the kitchen stopped working, but it was in the garage. So I didn't even think anything of it. When I moved, they were like, either you leave that new refrigerator or we're going to charge you, I think it was like $600. And I'm like, if I would have just called them and said, hey, the refrigerator isn't working, but I didn't think about it, so I had to leave the new one, or let them charge me $600, which... I don't know. Now that I think of it, I probably should have let them charge me $600 because it was a nice fridge. But, that's just one of the downfalls of renting. If you change something, you have to change it back. And if you don't, there has to be some compensation for it. So, it was stressful. It was, but my expectations were off. My ambition was way off. I'm just like, okay, I can do whatever I want. No, you cannot. This is not your house. So it's definitely important to understand that about the rent versus buy, because, when it's not yours, you just can't do whatever you want whenever you want. So, but how was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was absolutely great. We had family over. My mom, is usually her time of year to be able to cook for everyone, and of course we all enjoy it. We get these special rolls twice a year, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we literally fight each other for it.
I need to try one of those.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So they only come twice a year, and you make sure you're around both of those times in order to get them. So we enjoyed it. My dad was actually born on Thanksgiving, so it's important to him for everyone. Although today's his birthday, happy birthday!
Happy birthday to you.
Yeah. So, but it is important for everyone to be together, at least for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
On that day, so we all kind of sat around and talked about what we were thankful for. And we've been a very blessed family. So we had a lot to be thankful for. The kids were as silly as possible. So they were just as silly as I ever, which is fun. You know, you love to hear the laughter of children.
Definitely.
Just children being kids and boys being boys.
Yeah.
And just being able to truly just have a childhood.
Definitely.
You know, so
definitely.
We really enjoyed each other, kind of joning on each other a little bit. We still say joning, you know, talking about each other, just getting smart with one another, you know, just family stuff, how we show our love.
Exactly.
How about you? How was your Thanksgiving?
My Thanksgiving was a lot of fun, and I actually have a video to share from Thanksgiving. Yes, I do. So we played a new. I emailed it to Jeremy, and he forwarded it. So I'll send it again. I'll send it to you to the WLVS. I'll send it to you. So my best friend has embraced me. Her and her family have truly embraced me and welcomed me into their family. And so it was my second year spending Thanksgiving with them. And so my best friend is really big on playing games and things like that. Yeah, playing games and stuff. And so she got this game and we played it, and it was just so much fun. Like, it really made my week. I've watched it so many times. Check it out.
Grab, grab. Glug, 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 glug. One more time. Lala, grab, crowd. Lala likes clouds.
Wet clouds, flowers, wet clouds. Cloud as a flower.
Give it up. You need to introduce your teeth to each other.
That game was so much fun. So
I'm to get that for Christmas.
Yes, what I was trying to say was Bible book club. That's what I was trying to say. Exactly. Yeah, nothing even close. It was so much fun. It was fun. And it actually different versions of that game. That was one of the easier ones. But they have some other versions that have longer sentences to say. And it seemed like every card I picked was was like a long sentence that I just knew wasn't going to happen because I have an underbite. That's why she said you need to introduce your teeth to each other, because I can't make certain sounds because they're not meeting. But it was really fun, and it really helped me take my mind off of things and just not be stressed and not, be sad or anything like that. So it was really, really
That's
a lot
a really
of fun.
good tip during the holiday season. You know, a lot of times during the holidays, it's kind of it can be a somber for some people, and being able to be around positive, fun-loving folks, being able to do something fun, such as the game, and being able to make positive, great laughter memories,
Definitely.
is absolutely good, especially during the holidays when there are times where seasonal depression can kick in. So, and we'll talk more about that later, but
Definitely.
I think you did an excellent job at making sure that you made some good memories.
Yes. Very thankful for my best friend. But thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you tuning in with us, and we will be back next week to talk more about real estate and stress management, because that's important.
Absolutely.
So make sure you come back and join us next Monday night at 6 p.m.
Listen, vision. DC's #1 recording studio.